Emmerdale Spoilers, Noah overwhelmed by Amelia amid new killer Dan Agony. With Emmerdale having been rocked by the news that Dan Spencer has been sentenced to a long prison term for killing a man, in coming episodes the villagers start to process the news. Dan lashed out at Lloyd, the creepy pervert who'd targeted Amelia after noticing her social media posts online. Lloyd had turned up at the salon where Amelia works, at first pretending to be a customer, but very soon revealing that he had a specific interest in her. She was frightened and spooked, and deeply relieved when Mandy came in and got rid of him. Following this, Dan was concerned about his daughter and visited Lloyd at his workplace to warn him off. When Lloyd disregarded the warnings and showed up in the village, Dan confronted him. Lloyd taunted him about Amelia. Dan saw red and unleashed one single punch. This turned out to be all it took to put Lloyd in a coma. Dan was racked by guilt, and after at first claiming that he'd thrown the punch in self-defense, he later admitted everything and pleaded guilty to GBH. After Lloyd's death, the charge was changed to manslaughter, but Dan's guilty plea still stood. After rejecting the idea of going on the run, Dan was forced to face the reality that he'd probably be going to prison and he'd have to leave Amelia and Esther behind. In genuinely sad scenes, he said his goodbyes to his friends in the village and braced himself for the punishment to come as he was sentenced. The jail term he got was much longer than anyone had expected, and Amelia was distraught. The news soon filtered back to Emmerdale, where the villagers struggled to process what had happened. In upcoming episodes, Amelia must start to face life without her dad, something she previously found unthinkable. She falls out with Noah, but an encounter with Claudette makes her realize that Noah has always had her best interests at heart, and she calls him to make up with him. Noah supports Amelia all the time, Daisy Campbell told us. He is her biggest rock always. He certainly gives her reassurance and helps her through thick and thin. At the same time, Amelia realizes she has reserves of courage she didn't know she had. Noah is hugely impressed by her bravery, as she says she plans to visit Dan in the prison the following day. At first I really don't think she would cope well because she's a single mum with college and a job to think about, Daisy said. I think it would take a while to get used to, because she's always had Dan there. In good time I think she would learn to cope.